Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Melton Steve. We're talking about a seat at the table. This is where you get your power, information, the understanding of what it is to have a seat. Tonight, we're joined by Indiana State Senator. When I say a gentleman that is definitely on the front line and in the hot seat and in the seat of making policy each and every day, Senator Melton, how are you?
I'm well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
We thank you for coming on a seat. When individuals today, given that you're a legislator, there seems to be an onslaught. People want to actually change the discussion as it relates to funding. You're in that position. Police, district attorneys, the entire financial situation, and there's a pandemic, one of race, which is changing the paradigm that individuals have for African Americans, as in, we all know Black Lives Matter.
Absolutely.
You're in a red state.
Yes.
It's a tough position. You are in a place where the Vice President of the States just began wearing a mask. Can you give us a state of what it's like to sit at the table like you are as a legislator and represent not only Indiana, but the entire nation? Because people don't omit or give you a pass. When they see you, they see a Black man if you don't let them know who you are.
Oh, absolutely. First off, I just want to thank you all for having me on and forgive me for taking this in the car. I'm literally here at a demonstration right now in Bloomington, Indiana, 3 hours away from my home of Gary, Indiana, where there's a protest in regards to what took place with Vox Booker, with the attempted lynching of him in Bloomington on July 4th. So we are here demanding that action is taken by the Department of Natural Resources, and we're also demanding that the prosecutor file charges against the gentleman and all those a part of that situation. But ultimately, even before what took place on July 4th, just like every cities and communities across the nation, Indiana is no different. We've been struggling with police brutality. We've been dealing with racism, systemic racism, and that's one of the reasons why I ran for the state legislature. Serving in that capacity, I've seen and I've learned a lot, but the one thing I will not deny is that I am a Black man first before I am an elected official, and that I have a commitment and obligation to my community and to my people to speak on their behalf at the legislature and vote in the best interest of them. And you spoke very specifically about Indiana being a very conservative state and very quote unquote red state. That's true. And it has been a barrier. It has been issues that we've had to overcome. But I think and what I'm seeing and I'm feeling right now is that we're at the cusp of making some things happen. And that's a result of the people speaking up. For example, the event that we're at today is a very peaceful event. It was a very diverse event. Bloomington, Indiana is in central Indiana, a little further south of the state. And there's been a history of racism. There's been a history of the Ku Klux Klan in this part of the state as well. But the folks that came out today, they were organized, they had a message, and I believe that they are sticking to their message and getting the response that is needed through local leadership.
Let's watch this video for 1 second.
Let him go. Please let him go. We're going to as soon as you let him go.
You go.
I'm going to.
You go. Gotta get the fuck out of here.
Let him go.
Get your phone out here and go.
Let him
Shake
go.
your head at me.
Let him go.
Get the fuck out of here.
What do you really want to call me?
Do it, you nappy-headed bitch.
What do you want to call me?
About this? You with your 5 white friends? You happy with your 5 white friends?
You guys started all this shit.
Fuck you. Put it in your fucking film, bitch. Film it. Film it all. Fuck you.
That's Human Rights Commissioner Vox Booker, who they have pinned to the tree, waiting for a noose to be made. See, when police arrived, they made no arrest at all. Matter of fact, they were adamant about it. No, we need these white racist punks off the street before they do to someone else what they wish they could have did to him.
Did you imagine that we'd be saying this in 2020?
No, but seeing it, it made my heart cry. I thought it could have been me. I thought I have boys that I'm raising, and they'll be of college age, and this is a university town, and Lord forbid if I were to see that at a relative or a friend, but it doesn't matter, close or not. Your heart goes out, and you have anger and frustration. You get tired of seeing and hearing what's taking place across the country. But I am happy to say that we're hearing that the FBI is taking this on as a hate crimes today. It was just announced at the rally that the FBI will be taking on the investigation. But let's get to the core of the issue, right?
Right.
There was no arrest.
Right.
There was no arrest. Ridiculous. Now, if this was the shoe on the other foot, if these were Black individuals and a white man, there would have been an arrest on site. Possibly no questions asked until you got down to booking. So one of the things I would say is this is an example of some of the core issues that we're experiencing in criminal justice. And that's why criminal justice reform shouldn't just be a catchphrase or a slogan that we need to do. No, we need to totally deconstruct and create a system that works for every single person. And we see that across the nation.
But when you look at that video, they're unapologetic. They literally don't have any fear. And then you're saying that you may have made it to booking. Most brothers don't make it to booking. George Floyd did not make it to booking.
Absolutely.
You know, when you think about that, you say, well, if it been on the other shoe, they give them a ride home.
Right.
They don't take out a taser. They'll let them steal their car. I mean, we don't make it to booking.
Absolutely.
I think the conversation, you as a legislator, it's tough. That has to be tough in a state that is barely beginning to think about being perfect.
You know, I agree with everything, but here's the one thing I would say about the political landscape. It looks red for a reason. Because of gerrymandering and breaking it down to the scientific form and the data of voting, that's why it looks red.
Right.
I don't think the way the Indiana General Assembly is set up now that it's a true reflection of the voters across the entire gambit. Voter suppression plays a role in that. I live in a community right now where my first year in the legislature, they were trying to pass the law, and they did eventually pass the law to consolidate our precincts. They said if under 600 people didn't vote in this in the last presidential election, that we need to close precincts down. And so what happens? And we experience this right now. That senior citizen that's been going to that same schoolhouse to vote for 30 years didn't get the memo that she walk up ready to vote, pull on a door, and it's closed. She didn't get the memo that her precinct was closed. And their whole rationale, quote unquote, is saving money. That's not a case for the Black community when transportation is an issue, when the lack of communication from government to the people is an issue. So it's systemically happening and it's intentional. There's an intentionality that we've seen with the policies that come in place. And that's why we demanded that the governor, and this is the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus, create a commission to evaluate and study the policies that have historically oppressed Black people in the state of Indiana. It's time. Right now, we have the ear and the hearts of so many people that we traditionally wouldn't have their attention. I've had some of my white colleagues call me, and I believe many of them were sincere in asking, what can we do? And I share with them what I believe that should be done. We need them to step up. We need them to speak out, especially when we're not in the room to speak on our people or our community's behalf. So right now, the public pressure that we are seeing is paying off. But the one thing I would say about one of the colleagues that called me, he classified the demonstrations as, we need to stop these riots. I had to pump his brakes right there. And say, wait a minute, see, that's, I can tell what type of news outlet you're listening to or watching, because that's a narrative that's being pushed to a certain demographic of people to spark fear and anger, to say that we're in the streets causing chaos. No, this is individuals in the streets that's crying out because we've been unheard for so long. So we're seeing it right here in Indiana firsthand. You know, when I look at the demonstrations I've been a part of, not all of them were as peaceful and positive than the one I just walked away from. In particular, there was one, and I'm not even going to name the community. The moment you walk up, you feel aggressiveness. You see the militarization. You see the armored vehicles. You see individuals on the rooftops. You see the drones flying over your head. You see the helicopters. That will make any person feel threatened or have fear when you come in peace to let your voice be heard, and all you're carrying is a sign.
Yeah, the playbook is very different when you think about an uprising versus a riot. You know, we are clearly rising up against your oppression, your systematic oppression, your voter suppression, your dream suppression, and your murderous behavior. We're rising up. It has nothing to do with a riot. We're rising up. I think that when we, you know, I sad part is there were probably, and I think in any movement, there are those who are even in our own community that had lens that weren't quite ready for a change.
Right.
You know, I think the statues, many people thought, oh, it's just, no, it's not just Trevon. It's the signs, it's the flags. When you saw NASCAR change their flag, you know, it's a whole movement. And
it's a movement, yes, but it's time to put that movement into policy. Mm-hmm. For substantive changes to take place. And sometimes communities don't have the representation to speak on their behalf, that understand or even care, and be very blunt and honest about it. You know, last night right here in Bloomington, Indiana, during the demonstration, it wasn't so peaceful. 2 individuals got hit by a car. That change of event took the focus away on the issue and the message that everyone came out here to force, and it redirected the media's attention to that incident. Now, that incident needs attention, but the perpetrators injected themselves in the situation and changed the narrative off of the reason why everyone came to rally and to protest and let their voices be heard. So there's so much work that need to be done.
Yeah, but it also is demonstrated, and I think that you have kind of pointed to it, the need to stay trained and ready as a community to organize. I mean, yes. It is very obvious that we have to continue to be organized. It is very obvious that we need to be trained as a community.
Yes.
What type of legislation are you putting forward to kind of give us vision of ourselves?
Right. Well, specifically around the policing issue, I've been working with my colleagues in the Black Caucus here in Indiana, and we put a list of policies. And many of these things, let me be clear, we've been filing for years. You know, racial profiling, anti-racist training for officers. But some of the things that we are very, we've been seeing some type of interest in is a collective database that's tracking officers that may have a history at another department or a history at another state, well, not another state, but another community or county, that a history of racism or violence, making that data available across the board and also making it public to a certain degree, where they can't just go get fired and go to another police department and bring that same mentality there. I heard it said once before, I'm not sure, I think it was Chris Rock that said, you know, there are certain professions you can't have you can't have one bad apple in a profession of being a doctor or a dentist or somebody like that. You got to be on your game pretty much, and I'm paraphrasing, all the time. And that should be the case for law enforcement. I have family, I have friends, loved ones that are in law enforcement. And they're the things that we need to do to support them in terms of mental health and equipping them with the resources to address with issues and trauma. But we in the Black community, we've had a history, a very deep history of traumatic situations. So the database, banning the chokehold, the no-knock warrants, making sure that that's something that is addressed. And also, here's another conversation that's being kind of debated, or not debated, but discussed right now, these false police calls that individuals are seeing, whatever they may be seeing, which is nothing, and calling the police, and it creates another situation. So the list is extremely long, but the immediate demands that we gave to the governor of this state, which he could do right now through executive order, is until we get back into session, which is not until January of 2021, he should rule or sign an executive order that the chokehold is an illegal hold for police, and that should not be done. And all of those other things, such as the no-knock warrants and things like that, until we get back into session and be able to address it through policy, he should be able to use his influence to make those demands across the entire state.
That's good news. Lisa has an ask, and we appreciate you being on the front line. How is the brother? Have you spoken to the brother that they attempted to lynch yet?
Yes, I called him the day after. He was, as you would suspect, traumatized. He's been strong. I would say this, I don't appreciate how the media has tried to attack his character or question the incident. I think that's another tactic of redirecting our focus on the issues at hand. So I commend him for being brave and willing to tell his story. Even some of the individuals that were with him that called the police or were present with him, his white friends, they're fearful of their lives right now. So yeah, this is a very interesting time in Indiana, what just happened.
Yeah, the narrative is always trying to push it in the opposite direction. You know, it is hard for them to accept the truth, but it's on video.
Right.
Thank God it's on video. So we don't want to take up all of your time because I know you're part of it. Let's stay connected and get a seat. Continue to represent us in your seat.
Thank you.
Our prayers are with you here at Rolling Out, and we really appreciate all that you're doing to make a difference in the lives of all Black people, because I just passed through your state coming back here, and you know, y'all ain't wearing enough masks. I know you are, but that culture down there is
Yep.
So know that we appreciate you, and our love and prayers are with you and your family at this moment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
All right, God bless.
Thank you. For all of you, this is a seat at the table. You have been with our state senator. He is giving you the insight on the lynching and the changes in the state legislature of Indiana. He is in a seat of power. He is executing his power for us as a community. We appreciate you tuning in. Log on to more at rollingout.com. I am Munson Steed, and you have been watching A Seat at the Table. Peace.